Good morning. Welcome back to Orange Genie and the update webinar for the off-payroll working in the public sector. Most of you are returning, and hopefully I made such a great impression on you last time that you've remembered I'm Graham Fisher, Chief Executive of Orange Genie and a board member of the Freelance and Contractor Services Association. My presentation should last about 25 to 30 minutes, allowing time for a Q&A session at the end. As last time, I will place everyone on mute while I go through the presentation, so you don't have to worry about phones ringing in the background and other interruptions. I will unmute you for the question and answer session. Also, you'll be able to use a question box throughout the session. I think it's on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'd encourage you to type in your questions as they occur, and I will try to answer them as we go, or more likely at the end of the presentation. We will be sending everybody a copy of the slide deck, and we'll also let you have the answers to all the questions that have been raised. They may take a little bit longer to get through and get done. Okay. Previous webinar was obviously put together prior to both the autumn statement and the release of the draft legislation on Monday. So a lot of what we said was guesswork. Clearly we know a lot more now, and some of the guesswork has gone, although there are still gaps. To add to my font of knowledge, I also attended a Chatham House Rules meeting with the Chancellor of the Exchequer the day after his autumn statement, and together with other members of the Freelance and Contractor Services Association, we were the first to see the latest iteration of the online digital tool. You'll all be excited to know that. I've put together this agenda in order to pass on all the information that we've got, but I've also included a couple of slides on the changes to the flat rate VAT scheme and other announcements which have less immediate impact. I will do my best to cover off all the points. Before I move on, I want to make it clear that Orange Genie believes the changes announced both in this statement and the Budget 2016 will damage the growth, flexibility and well-being of the temporary workforce. I made these points in my meeting with the Chancellor and came away with a clear impression that the government do genuinely value the flexible workforce, but we have an image problem and are seen as serial tax avoiders. And until the supply chain partners are seen to act as catalysts for compliance and best practice, we will continue to be targeted and undervalued. And as an aside, it was made pretty clear to me that there will be no policy shift on the apprenticeship levy, which we know we're all concerned about. On a positive note, I was asked to urge the industry and all of you to participate fully in the fairer tax consultation when it's formally launched. And they seem to be putting a lot of weight on that, and in the hope that they start to understand how our sector actually works. So let's start by confirming what court looks like. The regulations will only be applied where both a public authority, as defined, and I think we knew this, by either the Freedom of Information Act 2000 or the Freedom of Information Act Scotland 2002, and an individual worker personally performing services through an intermediary, a personal service company, are in the supply chain. So stating the obvious, no public sector body means not caught by changes, and similarly no PSC means not caught by changes. The regulations do not affect the private sector specifically, and in particular the private sector outsourcers delivering services directly into the public sector. This could be an agency providing services rather than the provision of labour. I don't want anyone to get the idea that there might be a loophole here. I'm only trying to describe a genuine outsourcing arrangement. We've had a few of you already asked for clarity on this definition, and we've passed your question on to HMRC, and we'll come back to you as soon as we know the answer. The third point should have most of you expressing huge sighs of relief. The consultation had proposed that responsibility for both the IR35 assessment and payment of the correct taxes would lie with you, the agency, in certain circumstances. This was hugely unfair, but to their credit, they have listened and made a fundamental change. HMRC have decided to make the public sector bodies alone responsible for IR35 assessment, so this is a major victory for common sense and will take a lot of heat and anger out of the debate around these proposals. So you're off the hook. Unfortunately, you're not completely off the hook. Where you are the fee payer, you will have responsibility for ensuring the correct taxes are paid. But the risks have been reduced, and I would suggest almost to zero. The removal of responsibility for the IR35 assessment also removes the contingent liability from you for any unpaid taxes by contractors operating outside IR35. In future, liability for an incorrect assessment will lie with the public sector body alone. However, you are now potentially back on the hook for any unpaid taxes by the personal service company contractors operating inside IR35 and where you are the fee payer. You will need to payroll them and ensure the correct payroll taxes are paid to HMRC. To help understand who's on the hook, I've put some examples together. I hope these make sense. In these examples, the red boxes at the top indicate where the regulations apply and shows that the public sector body is responsible for undertaking the IR35 assessments. They have to state the outcome in the contractual documents and ensure the information is passed down the supply chain. There is provision that if they haven't provided the information, you can request it and they must supply it within 31 days. The blue pattern or the blue boxes indicate the fee payer. So the fee payer must payroll the worker as you would with any permanent employee through your RTI payroll. Column 3 shows the situation where a worker is employed directly by a public sector body through their PSC, and in that case the public sector body is responsible for both the IR35 assessment and the payment of correct taxes, i.e. the public sector body is both assessor and fee payer. If you look to the right, the shaded in green, you will see that if the worker is supplied through a private sector outsource contract, which some of you might hold, these rules do not apply. Where the contractor is employed through an umbrella company or as a traditional agency worker, thus removing the PSC, the rules also do not apply. Where some of you use consolidated PSC models, we know it's particularly prevalent with supply teachers, nurses, social workers. These may well prove to be unpopular with your public sector client. They will have to provide an IR35 assessment and report it to their funding body, creating unwelcome additional administration, and they will also have a responsibility for supply chain compliance. So you need to think about that. Okay, now let's turn to tax. Just to reinforce the point, you have no responsibility nor liability where the public sector body has informed you that the assignment is outside IR35. If the public sector body has informed you that the assignment is inside IR35 and you are the fee payer, you will have to payroll the contractor as if they are an employee. You will have to go through all the usual checks, right to work, get a P45 and so on. If the worker is unable to supply a P45 showing their current tax code, you should either use the BR code or 0T code in the normal way. Although the worker is not entitled to statutory payments, pensions, student loans, and will have no other employment rights, you will have to account for the new apprenticeship levy if your payroll is over £3 million per annum. And that would include that if taking on the contractors through your payroll pushes you over the 3 million limit. The proposals have also removed the contractors' entitlement to 5% expense deduction where they are inside IR35. The explanation given was to ensure that we, that's you and us, don't have to make changes to our payroll software to enable us to account for it. I just suspect it's a bit vindictive, really. There are double taxation provisions, and all PSC contractors will need to complete their annual tax return and may need to claim back any overpaid taxes. Typically, if they're making their own contributions into their pension fund, that won't be allowed through your payroll, so they will have to payroll themselves again and go through the process once more. Finally, it's interesting to note that other than being able to request an explanation as to the basis on which an IR35 assessment has been made, there is no appeals process. I will touch on this shortly. So I'm going to say that's pretty much it. That's the major changes. But now I'm going into the territory where I think these are the areas that we should start to worry. So let's turn our attention to the off-payroll digital tool. We met with HMRC's digital developers following the autumn statement for a demonstration of the digital tool. The tool was in alpha prototype, effectively an automated interactive questionnaire. It will be ready for a private beta launch towards the end of January, and a decision will be made in late February, early March on when to go public, but with a launch date set on the 1st of April. The reason I've put this slide up is I have highlighted a pretty fundamental difference in what the developers are saying, and they're saying that the tool will tell us, will give us an answer based on HMRC's view. On the other hand, HMRC are telling us through the summary of responses that it will be based on case law. And in my view, here lies the fundamental flaw and the principal reason we should be concerned about the effects of these proposals. The public sector bodies will be encouraged to use the digital tool, which will give HMRC's view, and we have already seen that HMRC believe 90% of public sector personal service company contractors are not operating compliantly. Having seen the questions in the alpha prototype, now up to 55 questions, I can almost guarantee the digital tool will determine that most contractors will be inside IR35. And I wonder how many public sector bodies will seek to argue with HMRC over its use, particularly when there are financial penalties should HMRC disagree. And why no appeals process? Well, let me speculate. If a contractor determines they are outside IR35 and the public sector body accepts that decision, if HMRC subsequently raise an investigation and determine the assessment is wrong, it would appear that the public sector body has liability. So why go there in the first place? Although you may think these proposals and the use of the tool isn't your problem, the results could be a commercial disaster. What do you say to the contractor who may be earning 25 to 30% less going forward? And what are the chances that HMRC will notice a contractor moving from outside IR35 to inside on the same assignment and open an investigation. We've already seen our first public sector body insist on all contractors going through umbrella employment, and they will not allow contractors to work through their own PSC. And very clearly, what on earth's going to happen when they extend this into the private sector, which I think we must assume is going to happen. Okay, I'm going to say that's pretty much all I've got to say on the off-payroll changes. I'm going to just now quickly move on to the flat rate VAT scheme. In reality, this has been the biggest talking point in the contractor community, and was the change and it was the change announced to the flat rate scheme. It's been quite devastating. We had been warned by HMRC that the deliberate abuse of a loophole in the VAT scheme by a small number of service providers, principally focused on supply teachers, nurses, social workers and van drivers, would lead to everybody losing out, and they have. I feel particularly aggrieved for those contractors operating legitimately and genuinely in business in their own right. However, HMRC estimate that some 41,000 new companies are registered between March and August 2016 purely to take advantage of the VAT loophole. In response, they have now introduced a new 16.5% VAT rate from April 2017 for business with limited costs such as labour-only businesses. This will catch pretty much 100% of contractors. HMRC estimate they will save 690 million over the next 6 years, having brought in this measure. So let's have just a quick look at the effect. This is how the calculation runs. I hope you're marginally interested in this. If you look up, I've highlighted how you calculate the VAT on your outputs, in this case £8,736. You then calculate, I'm using the rate of an IT contractor here, 13.5% of your invoice total. That gives you a VAT tax of £7,076. Take one from the other, and that figure down there, the VAT profit, £1,660, was actually profit that was going into the contractor. If you now look at the changes that they've made, we've moved the 13.5 to 16.5%. So your input tax is now £8,649. So if you look down at the bottom, your profit was £1,660, it's now £87. So it pretty much kills off people who were incorporating to take advantage of that. Just to make sure that that happened, they then also took away the 5% allowance, so that disappears. I'm going to say I've put it over there for people who are outside the public sector, but of course inside the public sector it goes completely. So the £87 profit is hugely outweighed by the loss of effectively, let's just say 20% of £2,188. So pretty devastating for people who were abusing the system, but it's now carried over to all contractors. But we were warned. So what should you be doing? You need to appoint a transition team, and they need to become familiar with the legislation. Hopefully you've already got that underway now. First task should be to identify your public sector bodies who fall inside the Freedom of Information Act and engage with them to discuss how they want to deal with the risk. Are they prepared to deal with PSCs? What happens if the contractor disagrees with the IR35 assessment? You should also review your contracts and ensure they cover the PSB, the public sector body decision on IR35. And you need to discuss and agree how you will work if an assessment has not been made. Clearly, when an assessment hasn't been made, they have got 31 days to do it, but I don't know how you'll deal with pay rates when you don't know whether the assignment is inside or outside IR35. So you will need to get that sorted out with the client. You need to identify your contractors likely to be affected and discuss what they want to do. Some may well wish to walk away from the public sector if their assignment has moved from outside IR35 to inside for fear of the HMRC inspection. Some may not be affected and just carry on as normal. The earlier you know, the better you can plan your response. Unfortunately, many contractors are still unaware of changes and the potential impact on them, so it would be sensible to start communications program with them as soon as possible. And finally, if you are the fee payer, you need to determine how you're going to deal with the payroll implications. Clearly, you could go down your own agency payroll route, outsource payroll, or use umbrella payroll. Okay, in terms of what we're doing, I'm going to say what we're not doing now. Last time we saw you, we were going to introduce a payment intermediary. The principal reason for that was to help you with risk management because the risk on the IR35 assessment was so substantial that we felt that was an operation we should be undertaking. As a result of the change and the fact that the assessments now have to be made by the public sector body, we see no reason to introduce that service. So we're not proceeding with that at the moment. So what are we doing? Pretty much, I think, as we've told you in the past. Option one is business as usual. The umbrella, which includes education and construction in our case, if you use that solution, you're not caught by these proposals and you don't have any problem. Obviously, in terms of Orange Genie accountancy, we do IR35 assessments for our contractors in any event, so most of those won't be affected, or they will be fully aware of what's going on, and we have been communicating with them for some time, so there are no shocks there. We've also introduced support services now through Orange Genie compliance. I think there's a huge opportunity for you to add value to the public sector bodies. We've spoken to quite a few, and apart from the fact they don't like the legislation, none of them are prepared, or very few of them are prepared for these changes, and I think that you can add value by helping them. We can sit with you and organise presentations for you to go to them. We can train your staff to do those presentations and obviously brand them for you so that it puts you in a better light. And finally, we've introduced an outsource company now, so we can undertake agency PAYE on your behalf. So that's really where we sit on all of this. And 25 minutes, I'm done. So it's questions. So I think if we can unmute everybody, we'll go with the questions. Can you not just hit the top icon? And again, and again. No. we've actually upgraded our software, but rather than having one button to unmute everyone, we have to go through everybody individually.
Questions?
I'm going to say the good news is that this is taking so long, it just telling you that we've got an awful lot of people online listening to this. Okay, I apologise for the delay. You've got muted.
Is that good news?
Just another 60 seconds and we'll be back with you. Okay. I think we're pretty much there. So, has anyone got any questions they'd like to do?
My account manager has got instances over the last 6 months. Alarm. Then it got changed.
Okay, sorry, I've got a question here. Could I please just go over the double taxation part? So the issue here is that with the inside IR35 contractor, you will have payrolled them and deducted tax, but they do have some expenses that they are still allowed to claim against tax. So your calculation will have overpaid the tax. They will need to recalculate probably at the end of the year, and they will take into account those allowable expenses. This is not the 5%, but it's other allowable expenses that they have, and then they will need to recalculate and claim back any overpaid taxes that they've had. So I hope that answers that. That was from 2. 9. Does the legislation discriminate against supplying agencies as opposed to Okay, sorry, let's just go that one again. Does the legislation discriminate against supplying agencies as opposed to consultancies who can hire and provide services outside this? Yes, it does, is the simple answer. And again, I think we're aware that some public sector bodies have moved to employing consultancies or are planning to move to employing consultancies rather than individual contractors. It was a point that I raised with the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I don't think they understood that point, and that was one of the reasons they said get involved in the fairer tax consultation. And I think we need to be making noise about this, but I don't know how it will get resolved because they've excluded outsourcing through the public sector, through the private sector. So I'm afraid I think that is a problem for our section of the industry. Next question I've got here. If we believe contractors may fall within IR35 and choose to move them across to be inside prior to an assessment, would this, in your opinion, reduce the risk of an investigation? I think if the contractor is aware that he should have been inside IR35, and sorry, let me just be clear at this. Look, there was little chance in the past with the enforcement regime that they were going to get caught. So there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who were clearly inside IR35 who are now are now going to have to be developing their tax, calculating their tax on the fact that they're inside IR35. There's nothing that they can do about it. The quicker they fall into line, then I think the less the opportunity is that HMRC is going to open an investigation against them. I think what's more likely to happen is that HMRC will go now into the public sector body, potentially open one investigation against the whole public sector body, and then review what their process is for assessing IR35. Clearly, if it's the digital tool, going forward, there won't be a problem. I think the quicker you move, the less likely you are to have an investigation. If you leave it to the last minute or let it run over into the new year, then I think you are substantially raising your risk of an investigation. So next one, Gary. We're being advised by some of our contractors on site with the PSB that the PSB have held meetings where they have been advised that the PSB will be doing whatever they can to protect and find a way of retaining their contractor workforce. Do you think there is a likelihood of a workaround being established, or is this just wishful thinking? I think this is all about the digital tool. If they use the digital tool, I think you're going to find 90% are going to get caught. It's a problem. I think the only workaround, I don't think it's a workaround I'm about to say, that the public sector body can use is increase the wages, because if increase the pay rate, because if the person was previously genuinely outside and now because of a contrived digital tool they're going to be caught inside, they will rightly, in my view, be pretty upset. The only other issue is if I was talking to a guy called Dave Chaplin, some of you may know him. He runs a website called Contractor Calculator, and he has got his own digital tool that he's developed over the last 8 or 9 years. It's actually quite a good tool, and what he finds is with IR35, the problem that you have with IR35 is because of case law, people keep on asking binary questions thinking they're going to get a yes/no answer. And quite often in the assessment of IR35, it's, well, maybe, but let's look at the rest of the facts behind the assignment. Where over the years, he finds that about 30% of the assignments are outside IR35. About 30% of assignments are clearly inside IR35. And then that 60% in the middle are grey. Have I used the right number there? Yes. Sorry, the 40% in the middle are really undecided. They could go one way or the other because the facts aren't absolutely clear. So if the public sector body isn't willing to increase the rates, then the alternative is for them to persuade HMRC or to have an appeals process in place where they're going to accept the assessment made by someone externally. And if you look at someone, we use Bauer and Cottrell a lot of the time. Kate Cottrell is obviously well known in our industry, highly respected. My suggestion would be that if she's done an assessment that shows someone to be outside, I think it'd be pretty difficult for the public sector body or HMRC to argue with it. So I'm not sure that's answered your question. Is there a quick and easy workaround? Yeah, get the public sector body to pay more money. Okay, on to the next question. David, in your discussions with public sector bodies, was there an expectation that they will pick up the employer's national insurance? Yes, where they are running, where they are the fee payer and they are running payroll, as you would have to do, you will pick up the employer's national insurance and that will have to be paid over. You already have a limited company rate, which is meant to be an uplift on your agency rate to cover employers' national insurance. They do believe that that's already included in their rate, but they realise now that they may well be paying it over themselves. I hope that answers that one. Okay, Sarah, if we do not have a P45 and use the tax code based on a P46 assessment, will the liability of any underpaid taxes lay with the agency or the PSC individual? Okay, well, I think I don't think the agency should be concerned about this, and I don't believe it'll be anything to do necessarily with the PSC. If you haven't got a P45, and I think that'll happen quite often, then the P46 is quite an established process. RTI means that you'll get that feedback quite quickly from, or in our experience, quite quickly from HMRC. But in any event, you'll put them either on the BR code or the 0T code, and that means they will actually be paying more tax than they would be on, I think, any other code, tax code that you can have. So I don't think it'll be a problem to you, the agency, because you will be, in using the BR code, overpaying tax on their behalf. Clearly, as soon as you get the tax code through from the revenue, that will correct itself, and then you've still got the PSC is going to have to do their own calculation at the end of the year in order to claim back any of those other expenses they're allowed. Okay, I think at the moment that's all we've got. Are there any other questions? It's quite exciting. I can hear someone typing and I'm thinking, are they typing a question to me or but nothing's coming up. Okay, I think if we haven't got any more questions. Oh, sorry, one's more. David, how are outsourced consultancies defined? Right, sorry, I said during the presentation, poorly is the answer. Actually, what they have defined is what the public sector body is and what the worker is. They haven't defined what the consultancy is. So I've already written off to HMRC, and I think I'm meeting with them next week, and I'm trying to get an answer to that. So as soon as I do get a definition, and it's quite probable that they haven't thought about putting a definition in, but as soon as I get an answer, even if it's coming, I will let you know. The process they've got right now is the guidance notes that they've issued are draft, and we've now got the next 2 to 3 months to go back to them and actually ask all of these questions so that next time the guidance notes come out, which will probably be towards February, hopefully not as late as March, but they are sometimes, all of the queries that all of us have raised should be answered in the final version of the guidance notes. Saying that, I suppose I'm a bit cynical, is that sometimes I think HMRC rule it with fear, doubt and uncertainty, and they quite often prefer not to give us exact examples, so we'll pay more tax than we should do. Okay, Nigel, if we are working through CL1 framework via Capita, is this considered consultancy? I think it's not considered consultancy in that case. But to be honest with you, can I come back and actually test that out with you? I happen to know that one of my staff is with Capita, I think it's tomorrow, to go through some of this stuff. So we'll ask them and I'll get a clear answer back to you, Nigel, on that one. Sue, will a copy of the slides be sent out? Yes. And we're also going to make sure we've gone through all the answers, and we'll give you a copy of all of the answers. Hopefully they'll be right then. And I've got a bit more time to research some of them. Okay, Rachel, you're interested to see how Capita are updating their CL1 contract. Again, hopefully we might get some information from them tomorrow on that, and we'll certainly let you know that, let them know that people are asking that question. Right, David, HMRC specifically referenced Capgemini in a seminar last week as being an outsourced provider, so outside scope. I'm going to say yes, that's correct, because as soon as they're an outsourced provider, and there are agencies, incidentally, that I'm aware of, because I've spoken to a number of them, who do actually have outsourced contracts rather than labour supply contracts. They will be outside. The issue that just needs to be cleared up by HMRC is, but you haven't actually defined it in law here. So we want to go a little bit further than common sense maybe will tell you who is an outsourced provider and who isn't. But could you please actually give us a definition so we have certainty? So could you know about the Capita response? I'll probably let everyone have the Capita response as soon as we get it. Okay. No more questions at the moment. Yeah, look, if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask outside this forum, please don't hesitate to get hold of me, or we can schedule in a phone call, and I'll do my best to answer it. Getting your feedback is actually really helpful, because we are going to be very actively involved in ensuring HMRC do give us some decent guidance notes when they're eventually finalised, and it is extremely helpful just to let them know what's going on there. Okay. No, we've done that one. Okay. I think that's it. If I start to see everyone logging off, not very many people have left yet, then we'll conclude. Yeah, don't think we're getting any other questions, so I think thank you very much indeed for attending, and as I say, if there's anything we can help you with, we've got a pretty good knowledge. Don't hesitate to get hold of us on a one-to-one basis, and we're happy to answer you on the phone or come out and meet with you and go through this stuff in detail. Okay, thank you very much indeed for attending, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.